call them the accessory. Extra, إضافيات. Accessory, but they are very important. Okay? Accessory digestive organs. Okay? The accessory digestive organs. Those accessory digestive organs are made up superiorly of the salivary glands, and in the abdomen below, three main organs. Those are the liver, which is the largest organ and the gland in your body, the pancreas, the gallbladder, okay? The gallbladder. So, in the digestive system, we have a GI tract, GIT, or alimentary canal, and we have accessory organs, okay? Now, furthermore, in classification, in the GI tract, they divide the GI tract into superior and inferior, okay, parts. The superior part of the GI will involve the oral cavity, pharynx, esophagus, stomach, and the first part of small intestine, which we call it duodenum, okay? The first part, the duodenum. So, this is the upper. The lower one will be jejunum, ileum, and large intestine, okay? Same way, we divide the accessory organs into upper accessory organs and lower accessory organs. So we have superiorly mainly three accessory organs. Those are the three major salivary glands, parotid, submandibular, and sublingual. And we have three lower in the abdomen, which we talked about them now. Liver, pancreas, and gallbladder. Is this clear till now? Okay. So today, we will be covering, in this lecture, we're going more regional. So we're going from the upper digestive system, okay? Going down. Why did I say digestive? Because we will speak about oral cavity and pharynx today, okay, which are part of the GI tract, and we will be speaking about the salivary glands, the other accessory organs. Clear till now? Okay. So, now we will be speaking about the first thing, is the oral cavity, the first part in the alimentary canal. When we speak about any cavity, okay, in anatomy, okay, we define this cavity, okay, by two main things. First, the borders or the boundaries. The boundaries. So this is a cavity. We are in a cavity. This room is a cavity. So when we speak about it, we have to know what's the roof of this cavity. What's the floor? Okay. What are the walls, the lateral walls? Okay. So the borders or the boundaries. Then the contents. What's in there inside this cavity? Okay. And then we speak about the anatomy or the structure of these things inside. Okay? So when we speak about the oral cavity, you see that they determine the borders or the extensions of it. It's the cavity that extends from anteriorly the lips all the way posteriorly to where? To the pharynx, the second part of the GI part, okay? To the pharynx. Now the pharynx is a very large organ actually, compared with its, relatively speaking, okay, with its neighbor organs like the larynx. So the pharynx is actually extending from the base of the skull all the way behind the nose, all the way down where? To the level of C6, to the root of the neck. So there is part of the pharynx behind the nose. We would call it nasopharynx, or the nasal part of the pharynx. Part of the pharynx behind here, this one, which I am referring to it, behind the oral cavity, we would call it oropharynx, oral part of the pharynx. There is part of the pharynx behind the larynx, الحنجرة. Okay, this is the laryngopharynx or the laryngeal part of the pharynx. So actually the pharynx is 3 times larger than the larynx. Make this in mind, okay? So laryngopharynx. So now, what is go behind the oral cavity? It extends from the lips anteriorly to be more correct or more specific to the oropharynx posteriorly, okay? And it's actually open to the oropharynx, okay, through what? A small passage. This is small passage, which we can see it here. The oro from oral cavity, pharyngeal from the oropharynx. The oropharyngeal isthmus, okay? Isthmus in anatomy means a narrow passage, a straight, madir, like Swiss canal. It's a isthmus. Swiss canal is an isthmus between the Red Sea and Mediterranean Sea. Okay? So this is the oropharyngeal isthmus. It's the opening from oral cavity back into the oropharynx. So the extension from the lip to the oropharyngeal isthmus, where it opens into the oropharynx. Okay, what's there inside? The contents. Two main things in the oral cavity. Teeth, tongue. Okay? Teeth and tongue. So it's the cavity that extends from the lips anteriorly to the oropharynx posteriorly, and contains two things, tongue and teeth, which we'll be speaking about in this lecture. Okay? Before we go there, the teeth are actually dividing the oral cavity into two parts. A small space between the lips and the cheeks from one side, and the teeth and gum. The gum اللي هي اللثة, gingiva, okay? Between the teeth and gingiva from the other side. So this small space, you see which I'm determining here, is called the vestibule. And vestibule is a space, okay? Is a room. That's what does vestibule mean. So the vestibule is the space that's located between the lips and the cheeks from outside, the teeth and gingiva from inside, okay? So this is the vestibule. There is nothing in the vestibule except an opening of a gland. There is a small opening here, opposite to the upper second molar. We call it the opening of the parotid gland. It's the opening of the parotid duct of the gland. The vestibule is divided into sulci. You don't need to know about them, but we call them anteriorly labial, referring to the lip. Here buccal, referring to the cheek. So there is buccal sulci and labial sulci. That's the vestibule. But the main part of the oral cavity is what's covered inside by the teeth. So we call it the oral cavity proper. Proper means the main part. Okay? So the main part of the oral cavity is oral cavity proper, which is covered by the teeth, and it does contain actually the tongue. Okay? So the tongue is located in the oral cavity proper. Now the vestibule usually communicates with oral cavity proper, for sure. Okay? Through two areas. First, behind the third molar or the wisdom tooth, behind the teeth. When you have no more teeth, so there will be a communication for saliva. This is clinically important for the saliva that's coming from the parotid. Okay? How it will reach into oral cavity proper. They can go behind the third molar, okay, where they communicate, the vestibule and oral cavity proper. And the second area you need to know about is which we call it the three-way space. Three-way space. What is three-way space? Three-way space, okay, is the space between upper and lower teeth when the mandible is at physiologic rest. So when you are closing your mouth, the lips over each other, you would see that the upper and lower teeth are actually not contacting each other. Is that right? So when the mandible is at the physiologic rest, that means the muscles of mastication, which controlling the mandible, are relaxed. Okay? You will see that the mandible is keeping a space between upper and lower teeth. Okay? Range between 2 to 4 millimeters. This is called the three-way space. Okay? So it's the space between upper and lower teeth when the mandible is at physiologic rest. This is to show you the differences. So we know this is the vestibule, this is oral cavity proper containing the tongue, and here are the teeth. Borders, the oral cavity proper, now to distinguish, there is something called soft palate or hard palate. What's the difference between them when we speak about the palate? The hard palate contains a hard tissue, which is the bone. The soft palate, soft tissue, which is striated muscles. Okay? There are 5 muscles that contribute to the soft palate. Now the border or the junction between hard palate and soft palate is actually the junction of oropharyngeal isthmus. So the hard palate is the roof of the oral cavity, but the soft palate is the roof of oropharynx, oral part of the pharynx. Okay? Just to let you know about this. So when we speak about the roof of the oral cavity, it's just the hard palate, not hard and soft palate. Okay? The floor is the friction of mucous membrane below the tongue. Anteriorly, it communicates with the vestibule through the three-way space, and posteriorly communicates with the oropharynx through oropharyngeal isthmus. Okay? 2 main openings. Let's go directly to the contents. Okay? 2 main contents on the oral cavity now, which we will be speaking about. Teeth and tongue. Teeth, as you know, there are 2 sets of teeth. Deciduous, primary, permanent. Okay? Then, the deciduous or the primary teeth, those are 5 in each quadrant. We call them as this: central incisor, القاطع المركزي, lateral incisor, canine, first molar, second molar. So 5 in each quadrant. Total 20. Okay? 20 واحد. They start eruption between the age of 6 to 10 months. Okay? Depending on the nutrition situation of the kid and environmental factors. Okay? okay, usually in Jordan at the age of 8 months, okay, they start to erupt. With the first tooth to erupt is the lower central incisors. Usually lower teeth erupts before upper teeth, okay, and they start to erupt as the central incisors, lateral incisors, first molar, then canine, then second molar. Why is that? Because canine has the largest root, so it takes longer time for the eruption, okay, because it has the largest and longest root of these teeth. The primary tooth, the first primary tooth to erupt is the lower central incisor. These teeth will start to be shed at the age of, على أي عمر؟ 6 years. Okay. At the age of 6 years, لما الولد بيدخل على الصف الأول, the permanent dentition starts to erupt. Now, in permanent dentition, there are extra 3 teeth. Okay, so that's why it's 8 in each quadrant. Those now would be central, lateral incisor, نفس البرايمري. canine, بس الآن بيزيد عندي إيش؟ something we call it the before the molars, the premolars. First premolar, second premolar. Then we have a first molar, second molar, and we have additional one now, the third molar. Okay, so those are 8 in each quadrant. Total come 32. Okay, 32. Now they start eruption at the age of 6 years. حكيناها. The first permanent tooth to erupt is صح. ليش بس؟ مين اللي حكى first molar? Yes, it's the first molar. The first permanent dentition to erupt here is the first molar. طبعا اللور before الأبر again. بس ليش؟ No preceding deciduous tooth. Okay? فيش أمامه سن لبن اللي يعيق النمو تبعه. Okay? Because remember, this before it there is a central incisor, primary one. It has to shed, okay, or its root has to resorb before this to erupt. The same here. Before the first premolar, there is the first molar, primary. Before the second premolar, there is the primary second molar. But here there is no deciduous tooth, okay, before it. So it can erupt faster. So the first one to erupt at the age of 6 years is the first molar, أول سن بيطلع. يعني الولد ما بتسقط أسنانه اللبنية، لا بس بتشوفوا له طلع له طاحونة ثالث. Okay, هي فعليا this is the first permanent molar. They usually fully erupted by the age of 12 years by the second molar. يعني على 6 سنين بتطلع الفيرست مولر، على 12 سنة بعديها ب6 سنين كمان بتطلع السكند مولر، بعديها ب6 سنين على 18 سنة بتطلع الثيرد مولر. 6 years for each tooth. Okay? They are fully erupted by the age of 12 years. The order of eruption, again, central, lateral, first premolar, then canine, then second premolar. صح؟ صح ولا في شيء نسيته؟ First molar is the first. Yes, so first molar, central, lateral, first premolar, canine, second premolar, then the second molar. Okay? Now the third molar, and they call it the wisdom tooth because you are now become wise person or you become mature, let's say. Okay? That's why it's usually erupts between the age of 18 to 30 years. بعض الناس بجوز ما بيعقلوش فما بيطلع لهم بالمرة. So it erupts at the older age. The second organ in the oral cavity is the tongue. Now when we speak about the tongue, what is the tongue? Simply, the tongue عبارة عن مجموعة بلغة بسيطة، مجموعة من skeletal muscles. What does skeletal mean? Voluntary. Okay, so a group of skeletal muscles that gather together and we cover them with a mucous membrane. بغطيهم بmucous membrane. Mucous membranes means epithelial lining, خلايا طرائية, with a connective tissue. Okay, below, gathering basal lamina. So it's a mucous membrane covering a group of skeletal muscles. So it's a muscular organ, a group of skeletal muscles that is covered with a mucous membrane. The tongue, when you look to it, is divided into 2 halves. Like it's a replica, like your body. 2 halves, replicating each other. So it's 2 halves. Each half is separated from the other by a fibrous band. Okay. This fibrous band, we call it the labial septum or the median fibrous septum. Okay? The lingual septum, sorry. Lingual septum, okay? Or in other books, they call it the median fibrous septum. Septum facet, it's a fibrous because it's made of fibers, collagen fibers, okay? So this lingual septum, or the fibrous septum, when it's very tense in some persons, okay? It will produce a groove in the midline, on the surface of the tongue, as you see here, when it tense. Okay? This is what they call it the median groove or median fissure of the tongue. Okay? Not in everybody. Okay? Just in persons who have their fibrous septum is very tense. Okay? The tongue, based on its location now, is divided into two parts. Part of your tongue is located actually in the oral cavity proper, as we said. So we call it the oral part of the tongue. And this is approximately 2/3 of the tongue, the anterior 2/3. Okay? The posterior part of the tongue, which is approximately the posterior third, is located in the oropharynx, oral part of the pharynx. Okay? In the pharynx. So they call it the pharyngeal part. So when you look here, you can see that the anterior 2/3, I can demarcate it by soft and hard palate. If this is the junction between hard palate and soft palate, so this is the oral part, and this one would be the pharyngeal part. Okay? So oral part is about 2/3, the pharyngeal part is about the remaining third, okay, of the tongue. The tongue is divided into several surfaces in anatomy. The most important of them is the dorsal surface or the palatal surface, the upper one. The upper surface opposite to the palate, and we call it usually the dorsum of the tongue, okay, There is tip and margins of the tongue, as you see them here. That's usually located opposite to what? To the teeth. Then there is the lower surface. The lower surface of the tongue is made of very smooth, transparent mucous membrane that reflects from the tongue into the floor of the mouth. We call it the ventral surface of the tongue, and it's opposite to the floor of the mouth, okay, or floor of the oral cavity. And there is a root. This is important. There is a root to the tongue. This root is very important because it provides the connections of the tongue to the bone. Because you remember the tongue is group of skeletal muscles. So to produce movement, we need a bony attachment. So this is the root which provides the bony attachment. The tongue is attached posteriorly to which we call it hyoid bone, and anteriorly to the mandible. Okay? Anteriorly to the mandible. So there is a dorsum, ventral surface, tip and margins, and the root of the tongue. Okay? The root is to provide the bony attachment. In the dorsum, I told you it's the most important for us because of so many characteristic features in the dorsum of the tongue. Okay? What are there in the dorsum of the tongue? The first thing, if you look to a tongue, you would see that some people, not all of them, will have something called median fissure. Why is this happened? As I told you, because of the lingual fibrous septum. Okay? That tends this region, okay, providing this groove, the median fissure. Another groove or sulcus located between the oral part and the pharyngeal part of the tongue, which is inverted V shape. Please add inverted. Inverted V shape sulcus, okay, this one here. So we call it sulcus terminalis or the terminal sulcus. Nihaiya, okay, because it separates between the oral part of the tongue and the pharyngeal part of the tongue. Why they are separated, by the way? Because they have different embryological origin. So the oral part originates from anterior in the oral, the pharyngeal one in the pharynx, and they unite with each other later on during embryological development. Once they unite, the area of union, okay, or merging, okay, is demarcated by this sulcus, which is the sulcus terminalis. And because they have different embryological origins, you would expect that they should have different physiological functions. Okay? We will speak about that. So, it's an inverted V-shaped sulcus. We call it sulcus terminalis. It determines or separates the oral from the pharyngeal part. At the tip of sulcus terminalis, there is a foramen. We call it foramen cecum. Obliterated foramen. This is it. Okay? If you look to the tongue, this is sulcus terminalis here. Okay? And at the sulcus terminalis, at the tip, you see this obliterated foramen. So it's not actually a foramen. هي عبارة عن bit حفرة مش foramen. But during embryological development, it's actually open. It's a foramen. Okay? So we call it the foramen cecum. Cecum means obliterated, مغلقة. It's a blind opening. Okay? This is very important because this demarcating the area of what? Thyroglossal duct in the embryo. The thyroglossal duct. What is thyroglossal duct? During embryological development, okay, you have something called stem cells. Those are not differentiating cells. these cells, the cells which will be later on contributing to the formation of the thyroid gland. The thyroid gland, okay? Thyroidos. Thyros means ايش؟ shield, درع, مثل الدرع. That's why they call it thyroid gland. Okay? Thyroidos. اللي هي احنا بالعربي شو بسموها؟ درقية، بالدرق. شو يعني الدرق بالعربي؟ الدرق هو الدرع بس مصنوع من ايش؟ من الجلد. So it's a cliche or skinny shield. Okay? Not a metal shield. Okay? الميتال shield بالعربي هو الدرع. The skinny shield is الدرق. We call it الدرقية. بالنسبة للأورجان طبعا هي مش هي ملهاش علاقة. سموها like this because it's very close to the thyroid cartilage اللي هو الدرق الحقيقي. اللي هو الشيلد الحقيقي. Thyroid. The cartilage of the larynx. أخذوه بالريسبيراتوري سيستم. Why they call it thyroid؟ ليش بسموه like the shield؟ ليش shield هو؟ شو بيحمي؟ بيحمي الفوكال كوردز. إذا انكسر you will lose your voice. مش الفوكال كوردز attached to it. That's why they call it the shield. The gland that goes around it, they call it the thyroid gland. So thyroid gland كيف تتكون? The cells located at this region of the tongue, okay, will usually immigrate through a duct or a canal. في قناة during the region of فاتحة من الtongue to the root of the neck. هذه القناة, the cells will migrate بتهاجر through this canal or duct, which we call it thyroglossal duct, okay, all the way to the root of the neck. In the root of the neck, they will start to proliferate, يعني undergo mitosis, increase in number, okay, proliferate, and then differentiate, يعني specialize to become thyroid cells, follicular cells, okay, that's secreting the thyroxine. So, during vegetative development, this is an opening duct actually, from the tongue to the root of the neck, to allow for these cells to migrate and form the thyroid gland. Now, just before birth, there is no more need for this duct, so it will be replaced by fibrous tissue. فتبدأ تسكر from the middle up and down, okay, by fibrous tissue, all the way up until this region. So here now, after birth, you will see that it's obliterated. That's why they call it foramen cecum. Below, as it closes, it will leave something called pyramidal loop of the thyroid gland. Okay, have embryological remnant of thyroglossal duct below. The embryological remnant above in the oral cavity is foramen cecum. Okay? So what is foramen cecum? It's an obliterated foramen. It's demarcating what? It demarcates or marks the site of thyroglossal duct in the oral cavity. Okay? It marks the area or the origin of the thyroglossal duct. Something else. If you look to the dorsum of the tongue, بتلاحظوا انه خشن وفيه ايش؟ فيه elevations like this. Folded, يعني. It's folded, okay? It's not straight or smooth surface, مثل الventral, okay? Why it's going like this? Because of the presence of papillae. What's papillae? Papilla is the single, papilla is a finger-like projection. So those are finger-like projections, okay? فالmucous membrane إذا اللي بيغطي التنج مش بيجي بلف على التنج. As it goes histologically, it starts to fold into papillae, into finger-like projections, okay? And different shapes. So depending on the shape, we will call them. Some of them will have something like filiform, like the hair, مثل الشعر, hair follicle, okay? Like hair, so we call it filiform, shaped like hair. Some of them like the fungus, مثل الفطر, fungiform, okay? Some of them is very large and circular, circumvallate or vallate. Vallate means very large. You can see them here. You see them by naked eye. You see them? That's why they are large, vallate, okay? Very large. Some of them are linear folds. Linear folds, we call them foliate, okay? Indicating the linear shape of them, okay? These all we call them lingual papillae of the tongue. So you can see small bits like this one, fungiform, okay? Like those ones. You can see vallate, foliate, and the ones which is very small, difficult to distinguish, are the filiform, most numerous. Why these papillae are there? To increase the surface area, yes. ما لهم علاقة بالتيست, okay? They are just to increase the surface area. So once you increase the surface area of the tongue, this indicates what? More nerve endings can be there, okay? أنا بدل ما أجيب هذه واحدة وأفردها على هاي الاريا, أنا I can fold it وأحط واحدة ثانية وواحدة ثالثة, okay? On the same region, okay? By this more mucous membrane, more nerve endings there, so more taste buds, okay? So they are functioned why there to increase the surface area of the tongue. Why they increase the surface area? So they can carry on, this mucous membrane now can carry on more taste buds. Okay? More taste buds. However, one of them, the most numerous and the smallest, the filiform high, does not have taste buds. Okay? There is no taste buds. Okay? Nothing taste buds. But taste buds اللي هو special sensation. You will see them on the fungiform, on the vallate, on the foliate. Filiform does not. Why? Because they have nerve endings for something else. Keratinized, by the way, yes, to provide protection. Then the dorsum of the tongue is always there's a friction with food. So they have to be keratinized. So those are the only ones which are keratinized, most numerous, because to provide protection, okay, for the tongue against the friction with food. Also, they are containing the nerve endings of general sensation of the tongue. تعرفوا في general sensations عندنا شو هم؟ touch, pressure, thermal، حامي بارد، لما بتشرب كاسة الشاي حامي أو بارد. اوكي؟ شو في كمان؟ pain. اوكي؟ ألم. burning pain لما بتلهم. So there is pain sensation, thermal sensation, touch, pressure sensation. Most of these nerve endings you will see them where in the filiform. But most of the taste bud sensation, okay, or taste sensation, the taste bud, you will see them on the remaining papilla, okay, which function for taste. Now, where they located? These papilla which carry the taste buds, in fungiform, they are distributed all over the surface of the tongue. Okay, foliate, those are not very well developed in a human. Okay, you see them in other primates. However, these are linear folds. You see them here. Those are linear folds on each side near the sulcus terminalis. Let's look here on a real view. These are the foliate. You see them? Stuck to the fungiform, distributed all over the dorsum of the tongue and the margins. And these are the vallate papilla. And they all carry taste buds, which carry the sense of taste. Okay? So means if you put the food, whatever, sweet or sour or salt, on the tip, does it going to be different from the back of the tongue or from the margin of the tongue? ما في شيء اسمه tongue map. Yes. That's a myth. There is no something called tongue map. Since you have a taste bud on the foliate papilla, they have to taste the 4 tastes or the 5 tastes. في هسه شيء اسمه كونان كمان. Since you have taste buds on fungiform, you can taste the 5 tastes. Since you have taste buds here, you can taste. So there is nothing called tongue map for taste. Okay? Nothing called taste map. You can taste any taste sensation in any area containing taste buds. Okay? Clear? Okay. Something else now. If you look to the pharyngeal, احنا خلصنا هون، خلينا نروح هون. بس اشوف في شيء مش مكتوب. Where is the layer in front of? Yes, sulcus terminalis. Here. Now, if we speak about the pharyngeal part, the dorsal surface of the pharyngeal part of the tongue, posterior, totally different story. There is no papilla. ليش فيش papilla؟ لأني ما نشوف حاجة أزيد السيرفيس اريا. ليش؟ لأني نشوف حاجة للتيست سنسيشن هون. شو بحاجة لإيش؟ حاجة لبروتكشن. فهذا الميوكس membrane is actually covering under it aggregations, تجمعات, as you see here, of lymphatic nodules. Nodules تصغير نود, عقدة, عقيدات لمفاوية, صغير, تجمعات. Okay? All together we would call them the lingual tonsil, اللوز اللساني. Okay? So actually the posterior third or the pharyngeal part of the tongue is actually protective function that contains what? The lingual tonsil. Okay? Contains the lingual tonsil. تشبه باللي على الميوكس membrane تبعه. Okay? لأن مش بحاجة لأزيد السيرفيس اريا. بس السؤال هذا في تيست بادز ولا لا؟ أنا بدي إياكم تميزوا الفرق بين التيست باد اللي لها علاقة اللي نيرفس سيستم سنسيشن عن طريق الفيشيال وبين اللينجوال بابيلي. اللينجوال بابيلي بس تو انكريز سيرفيس اريا. تيست بادز فانكشن سنسيشن. لما ما فيش لينجوال بابيلي لا يعني إنه لا يوجد taste buds. Okay? And that's why, yes, there is taste buds. There is some taste buds at the dorsal or the pharyngeal part of the tongue. مش في تيست بادز بالاوروفارينكس حتى على الوول. اوكي بس السنسيشن تاعهم is carried by a different nerve. اوكي راح نحكي عنه. So that's the difference. So في oral part of the tongue, most common feature is the lingual papillae that increase surface area. Why they increase surface area? To contain more taste sensation or taste endings. اللي هم التيست buds. Pharyngeal part is the lingual tone, aggregation of lymphatic nodules. So there is aggregation of lymphatic nodules on the pharyngeal part or on the posterior third of the tongue. They all together form one tonsil. So on right or left, one tonsil. We call it the lingual tonsil. Okay, this lingual tonsil is part of Waldeyer's tonsillar ring. Henrik von Waldeyer is a German. Okay, that's why the W is pronounced as V. But in American, if you like, they still call him Waldeyer. So Waldeyer, this person describes 4 different tonsils in your body. That's located in the pharynx. وين موجودات؟ الفارنكس بالبلعوم. Okay. There are two kinds مش العدد نوعين behind the nasal cavity in the nasopharynx to protect structures going through the nose, and 2 different ones in the oropharynx, oral part of the pharynx, to protect against foreign structures entering through the oral cavity. So 4 kinds of tonsils. We will talk about them in the next lecture. Okay, those 4 tonsils, you see the most common of them here, you know them, those we call them palatine tonsils. اللي هم اللوز. Okay. There is the lingual tonsils. Those 2 kinds contain palatine, واحدة lingual, okay? The palatine and lingual tonsils in the oropharynx. There is also tubal and pharyngeal tonsil, the adenoid in the nasopharynx. We will talk about them. All together form what we call it the Waldeyer's ring. So lingual tonsil is part of Waldeyer's tonsillar ring. Ventral surface of the tongue. شو بنعرف عنه؟ الفنترال سيرفيس بيختلف. خلينا نطلع على الريال فيو. شوفوا كيف بيختلف. فيش فولدنجز، فيش كيراتينايزيشن، very smooth, very transparent, very thin mucous membrane. So if you look to the mucous membrane at the ventral surface of the tongue, it's very smooth, transparent and thin. حتى لدرجة إنه you can see the vein and the artery passing inside the tongue. These we call them. This is one is the deep lingual vein. اللي هو بياخذ البلاد سبلاي او blood drainage from the anterior 2/3 of the tongue. وحواليه you can see the deep lingual artery. Okay, so you can see them even through this transparent mucous membrane. This mucous membrane in the midline it will fold. راح ينطوي as you see. This folding is very important because it will provide connection of the tongue to floor of the mouth. Okay, to the floor of the mouth. This reflection or folding هذا الانطواء بسميه ايش؟ frenulum. The lingual frenulum. Okay, so we have a frenulum, lingual frenulum, and we have a smooth, transparent mucous membrane. So there is a lingual frenulum. It's a fold. Okay, there is 2 deep. Okay, sorry, there is a deep lingual vein and deep lingual artery. Okay, with lingual nerve passing there, and you can see them very easily. Fimbriated fold اللي هو البوردر لما ينتهي هذا السموث ميوكس ممبرين ويبدا المارجن. اوكي اللي هو الدورسم margin and dorsum of the tongue. We call it the fimbriated fold because it demarcates the end of the smooth mucous membrane and the starting of the folded one. Okay, and more keratinized or keratinized. ليش هذا مهم؟ حكينا الفرينيولم حكينا هذا السموث. There is 2 clinical points here, very important. In pediatrics now, some childs will born with a very long frenulum. The folding becomes extended, very long, which will restrict the movements of the tongue, okay, in the kids, okay, and this will provide problems. This is what we call it the tight tongue. لسانه معقود, okay. Tight tongue when the frenulum is excessively large or extends too far anteriorly, which will limit the tongue mobility. Okay, this in infants during first year of life will provide something with suckling problem بالرضاعة لكن مش يشكل له مشكلة ما يعرفش يرضع مظبوط, and later on it will provide after that speech problems بعد سنة. ليش؟ because some letters you have to get the tongue to contact opposite to the palate, صح؟ In the very large frenulum the tongue movement is restricted فبيبدأ ايش الولد ينفع تسميه. Okay? So there will be a difficulty in speech. So it will tight tongue when the frenulum is very large This will provide first suckling problems, later on speech problems. Okay? So the treatments يروح على البيدياتريك surgical cut of that frenulum a little bit. Okay? سموه frenectomy. So the first thing is frenectomy. See a case here of a frenectomy. Very simple one. See sort?
Under the tongue, this membrane or frenulum goes from the tongue to the alveolar ridge. If you can look very closely, under the frenulum there's a muscle called the genioglossus muscle. That little deepening muscle beneath the frenulum. The place that we want to snip is between the tongue and that genioglossus muscle. We snip parallel to the tongue into the sulcus, between the tongue and the muscle, where it's at its thinnest, so that we get the least amount of bleeding. And we want to go slightly deeper than the muscle itself, so that it's well attached to the gum line. After that, the baby has free access, freedom of movement of his tongue without impeding the movement by its attachment to the gum. When the frenulum is attached to the gum, then the tongue cannot be moved because when the jaw lowers, the tongue is pulled down and then can't suck properly. Okay, so if you'd like now, we will go on to the procedure. Okay? Parallel to the groove retractor, so they close in the retractor, and now we have the release of the tongue. There's no bleeding whatsoever. See that? Sometimes bleeding is really
Very easy, very simple procedure. You just put the groove retractor, pull the tongue and cut a little bit until you see there is a free range of movement, and that's all. The second thing we could use here in pharmacology, we use it in pharmacology and in pharmacy medicine, because as this is a very smooth surface, so anything you can put here can easily resolve, pass through this mucous membrane and get into the venous blood quickly in less than 1 minute. So they call it, use it for what? For absorption, quick need for absorption of the drugs, to get directly into the blood without passing through the hepatic metabolism, first hepatic pass. Okay? So to use this, we have something they call it sublingual absorption of the drugs. Okay? And the most common example, you know, is nitroglycerin, the vasodilator in angina, because you need blood to go fastly to dilate the coronary veins, okay, and coronary arteries. So they use it by putting nitroglycerin pills under the surface of the tongue. These pills will resolve and get directly into the deep lingual veins. So the pill is placed under the tongue, get absorbed and enters the deep lingual vein with less than 1 minute. Why deep lingual vein? بس ليش بالفين؟ ليش الابسوربشن بيروح على الفين؟ ليش بيروحش على الارتري؟ Why it goes to the vein? Yes. So in histology you studied that the difference histologically the artery في tonica media smooth muscle layer is very large, very thick. فهاي بتشكل ايش؟ عائق أو حاجز. Okay? It prevents the direct absorption or quick absorption of the drug. So that's why clinical things related to the tongue 5 minutes طول بس 5 minutes وبخلص. muscles of the tongue. حكينا الtongue عبارة عن skeletal muscle. Okay. بس the skeletal muscles in the tongue are specialized مثل الفيشيال expression muscles. إذا سمعت بالmuscles of facial expression شو اللي بيميزها؟ بيميزها إنها only one attachment to the bone, the other to the skin. So when they contract they move the skin. الtongue فيه نوعين من skeletal muscles. The first one is not attached to the bone at all. It's attached actually to the mucous membrane. They run from the mucous membrane anteriorly, as you see, all the way posterior, longitudinal. Some of them runs in a transverse, as you see these, from side to side. The mascat only with the mucous membrane, not with bone. So when these muscles contract, they change the shape of the tongue. They don't move the tongue, but they change its shape. Okay? These muscles, we call them the intrinsic muscles of the tongue. So there is intrinsic muscles within the tongue. They are just attached to the mucous membrane inside, okay? And they run in 3 directions: longitudinal, transverse, and vertical, okay? كلهم الانرvation للmuscles of the tongue. كل المسلز of the tongue are innervated by hypoglossal nerve. حكيت لكم عنه remember in the first year اللي هو cranial nerve number 12. سميناه hypoglossal because it goes to the neck, then loop to go to the tongue from below. Reach the tongue from below. That's why they call it hypoglossal nerve. Cranial nerve number 12. All muscles of the tongue, whether intrinsic or extrinsic, are innervated by hypoglossal nerve except one. رح نحكي عنها. Okay. فالintrinsic بشكل عام اللي they change the shape of the tongue, they innervated by hypoglossal nerve. So they change. The extrinsic muscles now, in textbooks of anatomy, there are 4 muscles. Okay. But actually there is another one. Okay, there are 5 extrinsic muscles of the tongue, not 4. Okay, but just to let you know, you need to stick with your textbook, that's fine. The 4 muscles that known, one comes from the palate all the way down to the tongue. So it's a muscle of the palate and a muscle of the tongue, by the way. We call it palatoglossus. I think this is the exception. Okay, so this is the exception. It's innervated by pharyngeal plexus by vagus nerve via pharyngeal plexus. Okay, vagus nerve via pharyngeal plexus. So the palatoglossus. There is one from the styloid process to the tongue, styloglossus. Okay, the main 2 now, which provide the root of the tongue. If you remember from the first lecture, واحدة من الهايويد bone to the tongue, hyoglossus. وهاي أهم واحدة from the genial tubercle أو mental spine of the mandible into the tongue. Genioglossus. الخامسة اللي ما بتسمعوا عنها is deep to the hyoglossus. If you cut the hyoglossus, you will see medial to it. They call it chondroglossus muscle. The chondroglossus هاي بتطلع من الميديال surface of the lesser horn of hyoid bone and gets inside the tongue, intermingling with the genioglossus muscle. Some anatomists, okay, they consider it as, or at the level of undergraduate studies, they consider it part of hyoglossus. Okay, but actually they are 2 separate muscles. So there is genioglossus, hyoglossus, chondroglossus, if you want to know about it, styloglossus, and palatoglossus. Genioglossus and hyoglossus are the most 2 important ones I told you. Okay, الانرvation لهم كلهم hypoglossal nerve with this exception. Okay, genioglossus, they call it genioglossus because it comes from the genial tubercle in the mandible into the tongue. Genioglossus. But now they don't call it genial tubercle just to make this important. في 2 muscles راح تسمعوا عنهم أو سمعت عنهم بلا مسأس, genioglossus و geniohyoid. Okay. Now during the Greek era, الفترة الإغريق, these 2 elevations, okay, on the mandible here, 2 elevations. واحدة بتطلع منهم الجينيوغلوسس وواحدة الجينيوهايويد. Okay. Those 2 muscles, they call them genio because they come from these. They call them genial tubercles. Genial in Greek means chin, button. Okay, that's why they call them genial tubercles. Now, after the Greek era, when they come the Roman, the Latin language, in Latin they change the name from genial tubercles to what you call them now in textbooks. مش راح تشوفوا genial tubercles في الاناتومي books. راح تشوفوا شيء اسمه mental spines. Okay, the mental in Latin means the chin also. So they changed the name from genial tubercle to mental spine. So in your anatomy books you will see mental spines, but they didn't change the name of the muscles. It remains genioglossus and geniohyoid. Just to know what's the difference, okay? So because nomenclature is very important. لما بعض الطلاب كانوا يسألوا ليش جينيو وهو طالعات من المنتال سباين. شو كنا نحكي لكم شيء ثاني عنهم، هسه بنحكي عن الجينيو جلوسوس محاضرة جاية. يعطيكم العافية.